Morning, it's Monday. Last week's video was focusing on intensity and looking at the different intensities that we should be training at as runners. There's a lot of science around training zones and which training zone you should be training in for different sessions. But overwhelmingly, the trend is that runners do train consistently too hard. I talked last week about that kind of grey area where it was neither, all out in the red zone, but neither low, easy intensity. So somewhere sort of halfway house where you're generating plenty of fatigue, you're lowering your immune system, you're making yourself more susceptible to injury, but you're not getting the training adaptations that you will do from training at the very top intensity. You're only really getting adaptations that you get when you're doing low intensity running. So we talked a little bit about polarized training, so doing 80% of your training at a really low intensity and just 20% at that really, really top end, and trying not to hang about in the mid zone. And it's really difficult. We go running, we feel good, we want to push ourselves. We know we did 5k last week in 27 minutes, we want to do it in 26:50 this time, but we're training to race, we're not racing to train. So your training sessions are all about discipline and trying to keep to a sensible level of intensity. So I said that I'd move on to describing some different ways of measuring your intensity, and I want to make this really accessible. So the first area that I'm going to concentrate on is using feel. Okay, so how your body feels, recognizing your breathing and understanding how that relates to the training intensity that you should be achieving. And the easiest way to measure feel is via what we call the rate of perceived exertion. And you might have heard people referring to the RPE scale, which is a rate of perceived exertion. And it's a quantitative way of measuring feel. And in sports science testing, you'll find people rigged up to all the gear, all the science testing going on, but occasionally they'll get a chart shoved in front of their face and they'll be asked to point out, how are you feeling? Are you 6? Are you 11? Are you 15? And there's an explanation next to it. So the rate of perceived exertion scale is attributed to Gunnar Borg. So they talk about the Borg scale. The Borg scale is a scale of 6 to 20. And so you'll find that people will talk about 6 out of 20 being no exertion at all. 13 out of 20 might be somewhat hard. 15 out of 20 is hard. 17 very hard, and when you're getting to the top end, 19, 20, you're looking at extremely hard, and maximal exertion is your 20. Now what we find with the Borg scale, when you use it for everyday athletes, nobody really thinks in scales out of 20. So for everyday athletes who are doing this for fun, who are using this as a simple rule of thumb, we tend to use a bit simpler scale, and I'm going to I'll share this with you on the Facebook group. I'll just move this over, move my camera angle. So basically we've come up with a 1 to 10 RPE scale, which works through from 1, whereas that's basically not generating any fatigue, not really doing anything, your breathing's very light, all the way through to an RPE 10. So a lot of the low intensity running that we talk about in terms of not generating too much fatigue is going to be in RPE 3 or 4. So at RPE 3 or 4, you can talk in full sentences, your body's comfortable, it's not started making any lactic acid, so you shouldn't be getting any DOMs or any muscle pain, particularly after your runs. And really, that's your all-day pace. You should feel like you could run at that pace all day. If you feel like you're having to walk, you're going too hard. So it might be that for your level of fitness, RP 3 or 4 is more of a brisk walk. So you need to be comfortable that you're talking in full sentences and you could really go on all day. We start to get into this sort of middle zone when we get into sort of zone 5, 6. And at the lowest intensity of this, it sees slightly more laboured breathing. So you start to notice a little bit of a change because your body is starting to make lactic acid. You should feel comfortable and like you can keep going, but your conversations start to get limited. You're perhaps speaking in broken sentences, maybe limited to a few words. So if you're on an easy run and you start to feel your breathing coming a bit laboured, or you couldn't speak in full sentences, then you need to pull back. So the next RPE zone I would talk about is kind of 7, 8. And that's where you do a lot of your track work. So this is a really good sort of threshold session. And when you're training in this zone, your body has hit that second turn point. So it's now making more lactic acid than your body can actually physically process. So your muscles are getting flooded with more lactic acid, which is going to lead to the DOMS the next day. So your delayed onset muscle soreness. You might start to feel a little bit sick. You're starting to feel that you're breathing heavily, and you definitely won't be able to speak in full sentences. You might just basically be able to speak the odd word. Now these sort of sessions, so these are your track sessions, they will take longer to recover from. So if you're working at your low intensity, which is your RPE 3, you're not going to take a lot of recovery time from that. Working at 7, 8, your body's going to need much more time to recover. So it might be that you take your rest day the day after a track session, or you make sure that you do some yoga, really sort of flush out all the toxins from your muscles. The top zone is 9, 10, and that's when you're really working hard. It might affect your ability to concentrate, your breathing's really laboured, you're not going to be able to keep it for a very long time, and you might feel sick. And again, these are the sessions that take the most time for your body to recover from, but you are going to get a high level of adaptation. You're also, if you do too much of this training and not recovering enough, you're going to basically just get so much fatigue. You're probably going to get injured, and it's very likely that you'll start to get common colds and your immune system will start to not kick in as you'd want it to. So really, the reason that we would work with feel rather than your Garmin, I mean, I love my watch more than anything. I wear it to weddings. It doesn't really look great with a posh frock, but you know, we're all wedded to our gadgets. But understanding your body's feel is absolutely key. The gadgets measure, you know, everything that you could possibly want to measure, but only you can fully understand how that feels. If your gadgets fail and you don't understand what you can push and what you can train with, you're really on the back foot. Our experience is that actually you can get some of your best performances racing on feel. If you're not wedded to heart rate, you're not wedded to your pace, and you just go and you know how hard you can push. And actually they're the races that you get the best results in. I think, you know, give it a try. It really does mean it's just you and your trainers out on the open road. Think about your breathing, think about what's happening to your body. Notice the signs. So your breathing starts to change. That's generally where your body started to create some lactic acid. When it changes again, that's when you're producing more lactic acid than your body can, faster than your body can process it. And again, that means you've moved into a different training zone. And all of those training zones will have different effects on your body. But for us, what we're trying to focus on is a consistent block of training where you don't get ill, you don't get injured, but you can run fast and you can run strong in your races. So making sure that you're doing a lot of your training around RPE 3, RPE 4, and then those harder sessions 7, 8, 9. So if you've got any questions, please do give me a shout and I shall pop in next week. Bye.